And we're live. It's the Revved Up 906 podcast, a Detroit Pistons podcast to be exact. And I'm Hudson.
And I'm Ryan.
And if you haven't heard, we do, after every Detroit Pistons game, Revved Up recaps here on YouTube. And if you haven't been tuning in, make sure to tune in. We talk about what went wrong, what went right, why the Pistons won, why they lost so brutally. We talk about it. We look at the box scores and we get into the nit and grit. So make sure to look out for Revved Up recaps. We have a lot of fun with it. We hop on Zoom and we get into it. This week, we have episode 11. We are officially in double digits for the second week. We love it. We love to see it. This week, we will be ranking the top 10 youngest NBA teams. And you might be wondering, well, how do you decide or go about picking the top 10? So what we decided to roll with was, when looking at who the top 10 teams are, is who's most likely to make the NBA finals within 5 years, youngest age average, record as of right now and standing in their respective conference, overall roster construction / chemistry of how well their team plays together. And so that will be what we looked at for our list. So we will start with number 10. We went with the Toronto Raptors, and their average age was 25.88, so nearly 26. Why'd we roll with the Raptors, Ryan?
Well, when you look at the roster, they are one of the younger teams.
Right.
And you look at their roster build up. I mean, yeah, Scotty Barnes, OG Anunoby, Gary Trent Jr., Fred VanVleet, Spicy P. I mean, the list goes on.
Right.
Their team, their core is solid, but their last championship was 2018-19. We all know that was pretty much because of Kawhi.
Yeah.
He leaves. The amount of playoff berths they've had since is just 2.
Yeah.
And not only that, but you throw out the playoffs. This team is just a good team. That's it. The last couple of years, they haven't been anything special in the playoffs. They've made a little small run here and there, but they're not going to win the championship. Let's be realistic here.
Somebody that the Raptors should be excited about, and a guy that I'm secretly kind of a fan of, is Delano Banton. He is lanky. He's kind of a longer point guard. You could kind of say he's a shooting guard, but he's a lot of fun to watch. I really enjoy watching him play for Toronto. He always tears us up.
Yeah, that team isn't very young, honestly.
Yeah.
The majority of their team is up there in age, like around 27, 28, 30 plus.
Yeah, and I know guys like Banton, he's 22, so he kind of brings the average down. Mm-hmm. Let's see, we got Malachi Flynn, who's 24, Ron Harper Jr., 22, Scotty Barnes at 21, Precious Achiuwa, so they got their 5 young guys, and then other than that, they got some older vets like Thaddeus Young. That leads us to number 9, the Houston Rockets at 23.58.
Yeah, so you look back at their longest playoff berth. It's been a while. They won the finals in 1994 and 95.
Right.
The amount of playoff berths since then is 17, so that's good.
Mm-hmm.
But you look at how much talent that they've had during those 17 years, and it's they should be winning a championship more often than not.
Yeah.
But they just can't win. There's a reason why they never won with James Harden. So who's to say this team, this very young team, is going to win a championship anytime soon?
Yeah, in the next, for sure, not the next 5 years. I think, the reason we put them in the top 10 is strictly just because of their young core guys. They have Jalen Green, who, he's kind of our rival because of the Cade Cunningham number 1, him number 2 kind of a thing. But he is pretty talented. They got Jabari Smith, who's pretty talented. They got Josh Christopher, that I don't think they're playing him enough. They're not giving him enough a shot, but he's pretty young. They got Jashawn Tate, who's sneaky young. They got Kenyon Martin Jr., 22.
I love him, honestly.
Yeah, he's fun to watch. So, they got a lot of guys. Oh, even Kevin Porter Jr., 22, which is just wild because he's been in the NBA a couple of years now. But so, they got this young core that is fun to watch, but they're just not mixing yet.
Yeah.
And that's why we can't really put them up higher. Otherwise, because of that young core, they might be looking at a 5 spot if they were looking, but they're at the bottom of the West. And they're not looking like they're going
to. I quoted this recently about Eric Gordon and the changes that happened between last season and this season. And he's like, there's been none. So you look at this team and it's like, it's the same team from last year. It just has a couple new guys and that's it. So unless they get a stud in the next coming draft, I don't see them being anything special in the next 5 seasons.
Yeah.
Just because it's like, they're still insanely young. Their 2 oldest guys are Eric Gordon and our guy Boban at 34. But I don't see Eric Gordon sticking around for 5 years. I don't see Boban sticking around for 5 years.
No.
This team, if they stay together, they could have a shot just because of their experience in playing together.
Right.
But otherwise, I don't see them doing anything.
Yeah, if we see next year them start to kind of pull it together, they're flirting with 8-9 spot in the West. We might be eating our words, but I don't think that's going to happen. Yeah. Though I think they're also favorited to take Wembanyama with us. So that would, I do not want the Rockets to get Wembanyama. I'd be so upset. So upset. That kind of leads us to number 8 with the Atlanta Hawks at their average age of 25.23.
Okay. We might get a lot of flack for this one.
Okay.
But I don't see this team winning. I don't. Their longest playoff berth was losing in the Eastern Conference Finals. So they really haven't been in a championship. Okay, they have been-ish in that range, but that was the St. Louis Hawks, not even Atlanta. But the last time they did that was 2020, 2021 there when when Trae Young had his words in Madison Square Garden. And I did not appreciate that. But their amount of playoff berths since then is just one, obviously, because it's 2020. But still, you look at their roster, they have a built roster. I love DeJounte Murray, and the fact that they added him in was good.
Right.
But you look at their core, they're all getting up there in age. For me, I see them as a win-now team. If they don't win now, then you're going to see moves. Because they've already talked about moving on from John Collins, and he's 25. Clint Capella is already 28 right now.
Yep.
There's not much more he can do. You look at Trae Young even. Trae Young is 24, so he's still getting up there. DeJounte Murray is 26. DeAndre Hunter, 25. A lot of their key guys are in their high 20s, early 30s range.
Yeah.
And you can't just have a group like that stay together forever. Because old teams can't win. If you look at the Lakers, they tried that already. It did not work last year. There's a reason why they got rid of a bunch of them. If they don't win now, I don't see them winning it in the next 5 years.
Yeah, because you see guys like Jalen Johnson who bring their average down. He's 21. You see guys like AJ Griffin who's 19. These guys... Tyrese Martin, who's 23. I'm not even sure who that is. So it's like Jalen Johnson had a great career at Duke, had some good hype, but he's just not seeming to be the guy they were expecting him to be. Yeah. So I think the reason why we had to put them at number 8 was because of Trae Young. Yeah. Because, yes, he's not our favorite guy, but he's a pretty good talent.
He's still good, but is he an MVP caliber player at the end of the day? No, he's not.
Yeah, at least not right now, for sure. And another reason why we had to put them at number 8 is because right now they are number 9 in the East. Yeah. So, they're in the playoff talk, but they're also not at the top of the conference. So it's like you had to kind of recognize them. Yeah. So we just kind of threw them at 8.
They're very underwhelming this year.
Yeah. So that leads us to number 7. Okay. Before we get into number 7, we might have some Pistons fans mad at us because they might want us to be higher just because our young core is so big, a lot of big names and so flashy. But that leads us to number 7, the Detroit Pistons at 25.08. And I also want to preface with number 7 is this is a Cade Cunningham. We're talking about this team right now without Cade Cunningham. Yep. Let's get into it.
So our longest playoff berth as of recently was losing in the finals in 2004, 2005.
Right.
Our amount of playoff berths since then, thanks to Stan Van Gundy, is 6. We haven't been good. Not for a while.
Yeah.
But we've had promising young players. They haven't hit in the right amount of time that we've needed them to hit.
Right.
Or they haven't just gotten off to a fresh start or a good start like we expected them to.
Yeah.
Guys like Stanley Johnson, Sekou Doumbouya, just so on. There's so many names.
Yeah.
But this team right now, we're very young. Like, you even look at Marvin Bagley right now, he's still only 23. And he's been in the league for a couple years now.
Yeah, like 4 or 5.
Yeah. And so when you look at that into consideration, including guys like him who have been in the league for a while and are still young, you have Hami, who's still only 24, Kevin Knox, 23. So, you have these guys that are still relatively young for having as much experience as they have. If we get Wemby in the offseason, who knows? This could be spectacular for us.
Right.
But if not, cool. Because this team is still really young. We're still getting in strides. Killian is playing great. Kevin Knox, when he's getting minutes, he's playing very efficiently. I think the sky is the limit right now for us. We just got to improve and just work together more as a team, because 12-35 is not good.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing too why we put them at 7 was we just don't really see them being in an NBA Finals in 5 years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We want them making playoff runs, but I just don't see them there yet.
Unless they get Wemby or even if not him, if they land a stud who can really take this team to the next level with a healthy Cade,
right,
then we're cooking. But if we remain where we are with our current roster, and let's say we move Nerlens Noel and Corey Joseph or Alec Burks or somebody like that at the deadline and get a pick or something, that could help us. But if we stay with the same old, we can improve, but it's not going to be drastic where we're going to be the next hottest team in the NBA. It just doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah. It's time is gonna tell with this team right now. After next year's draft, that will be a final piece, and I think we'll cool it in the draft for a couple years, and we'll see what it amounts to, what this chemistry leads to. If Ivy's going to be a superstar, if Cade's going to be a superstar, there's a lot of big ifs with this roster right now, and hopefully next season, when Cade's back, we can kind of have some of these ifs answered and put to peace.
And so real quick, a lot of people may be going, wow, you're really being hard on them. We're just being critical. Right. We love this team.
Yeah, I love them.
We love them a lot. There's so many guys. I can't tell you who my favorite player is on this team.
I know.
It's that good.
I know. It's tough.
So we love them at the end of the day. We're not hating on them. They're not competing to where we think they should be competing at right now.
Right. That'll lead us to number 6, the Orlando Magic, at the average age of 23.94.
So their longest playoff berth, lost in the finals in 2008, 2009.
Okay.
Dwight Howard.
Right.
But
carried him.
Amount of playoff berths since is only 5. That's not good.
Yeah.
But you look at how much talent that they've had alongside you correlate that with how we just talked about the Pistons. The amount of talent that they've had for so many years, it's how do you not win anything?
I know.
That Dwight Howard team, oh my goodness, it was just loaded, and you couldn't win.
Yeah, I think that naturally happens when a GOAT like Kobe is just taking over the West, right? I think that's just to show how great he was, how great I am, like that edit. So I think that's kind of just naturally going to happen. Something I wanted to hit on with the Magic is this with Detroit Pistons and Orlando being so young. I think they are the next great rivalry in the East.
Yep.
We've seen in past years, the Boston Celtics and the Los Angeles Lakers. We've seen these great rivalries. I think this is the next great thing. I think Jalen Suggs, Cade Cunningham going at it in Eastern Conference Finals. We're going to see these two teams start to clash, and especially with the Mo Wagner, Killian Hayes, whatever you want to call it, their scuffle that happened earlier this season. I think that's the first of many national highlights that these two teams are going to get.
Yeah, their roster right now, it's pretty good. I'm not complaining at the end of the day. If I'm the GM and this is my team, I'm happy.
Right.
It's just more of like, if they stick to their game plan right now, can they win? And I don't see them winning a finals in 5 years right now, just based off their previous history when they had guys like Dwight Howard, who is arguably one of their best players in franchise history, alongside of a Penny Hardaway or a Shaq or T-Mac. But yeah, you look at their current roster, when the oldest player is 28, you are doing something good.
Yeah, for real.
And that's Gary Harris. And 28 isn't even that old.
No.
And Gary Harris can go drop 20 every single night if he wanted to, because he can shoot.
Yeah.
Sparty, but he can shoot.
I mean, they have a lot of big names from like high school, from their high school days and college days, like Cole Anthony, Franz and Mo Wagner, RJ Hampton, Bull, Mo Bamba, Paulo Benchuro, Jalen Suggs. I mean, all these guys that I just listed are under. Mo is 25. He was the oldest out of all of those. Yeah. So, I mean, if these guys, with that being said, being such superstars in high school and college and being the head honchos in their respective country at the time when they were playing, it's going to be hard to find that chemistry. But if they do find it, and Jalen Suggs can stay healthy and Cole Anthony can stay healthy, these guys that are kind of struggling with health and injuries, if we see them pull it together physically, I think it'll pay off on the court.
And the emergence of Bol this season, my goodness.
Yeah. I'm so happy for him.
Yeah, but we had the chance to have him.
I know. It's a pain.
He just couldn't pass his physical.
I know. It hurts. It really does.
It does. But yeah, outside, just this team is loaded right now, and loaded in the sense of their names, right? Because play wise, they have special moments. Paulo's doing his thing this year, which we expected, but I don't. 5 years from now, after 5 years, I could see them winning a championship. Right now, in that 5 year span, no.
Once after the Pistons get their first one,
for sure.
We'll let them get the next year. That leads us to number 5 with the Oklahoma City Thunder at 23.1.
Their longest playoff berth, losing in the finals in 2011, 2012. Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, Serge Ibaka.
I loved that team.
Man, that team was stacked.
Yeah.
The only reason why they didn't win the following year is because Kevin Durant left.
Right.
But the amount of playoff berths since then, there's only been 7, meaning they've been mediocre.
Yeah.
And I didn't count Seattle because it's Oklahoma City. It's a whole new team. But their roster right now, it has some good quality players for sure. I wouldn't say it's as stacked as Orlando in terms of how many big name guys they have.
Right.
But when you have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander,
who's only 24. That is crazy.
And he's, oh my goodness, he's going off every single night.
I know.
He's one of the leading scorers in the NBA.
I know. That's why you kind of have to put OKC on top of like Detroit and Orlando, because they got Shai Gilgeous, who has proven he's all-star level.
Yeah, honestly, he could be an MVP. He has those numbers, but it's just a popularity contest at the end of the day, so he's not going to win it when you have Joel Embiid or Jason Tatum in front of him.
Yeah.
But you look at the rest of their roster, Josh Giddey, he can shoot.
Yeah.
He's a playmaker, and he's still only 20. Dort is still only 23. He's a lockdown defender. You saw what he did in the bubble that year.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh my goodness. And it gets me mixed up. They have 2 Jalen Williams,
right?
And it's so confusing. And they're both relatively close in age, 21 and 20.
Right.
But yeah, this team, like Chet Holmgren, he's the biggest question mark out of them all, honestly, because from being out this year, it's kind of like, so what can he actually do? Because at Gonzaga last year, it was like, oh, okay, that's Chet Holmgren. When I was sitting there watching him, like, he's nothing special.
Yeah, it didn't
feel like that. So that's why, for me, it's a big question mark on what he's going to do next, and especially in the NBA, because he's still very thin. He's really thin, like so much so that he could get injured a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But in the next 5 years, do I see them winning a championship? Maybe. It just depends on what Chet does and Shea.
Yeah, you got to see what Chet Holmgren does when he comes back from his injury. If he is a superstar like all these national commentators are saying, well, then they might have a shot if Shea and him are a good duo. But if he kind of turns out to be a bust, it's not happening. That leads us to number 4, the Utah Jazz, at the average age of 25.86.
Yeah, their longest playoff berth was losing in the finals in 1997 and 98.
Which that was John Stockton, Karl Malone type.
And their amount of playoff berths since then is 16, which is good. That's relatively high compared to every other team we've listed off so far.
Mm-hmm.
Their roster right now, it is amazing how good they are right now.
Right.
They're sitting at 23 and 24, which when they started the season, they were ranked first in the NBA at like 10-0 or something like that. They started off hot. When you have guys like Lauri Markkanen, who is pretty long into their career so far, but he's still only 25 years old.
Yeah.
And he's going off right now. My goodness.
It's crazy.
Yeah, but we can't say they're number 1 for the youngest teams in the NBA, because you look at Mike Conley, 35, Jordan Clarkson, 30, Kelly Olynyk, our guy, 31.
Mm-hmm.
So like they have a lot of older guys
helping out that are playing big minutes.
Yeah. But they still have a lot of good young players. Colin Sexton, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Talen Horton-Tucker, Jared Vanderbilt,
Johnny Juzang.
Yeah. A lot of good young guys.
For sure. Yeah, they'll be interesting to watch to see like if Lauri can keep up the play he's playing, because if he does, they're sitting 8 in the West. That's not bad.
Yeah, and the craziest thing too is they're doing this without their stars. And Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert.
Yeah, that they lost, yeah.
That's the craziest thing about it, about their current situation, is they're doing this without 2 of the top NBA players right now. And so it's exciting for Utah, but there's a reason why even Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert couldn't win a championship with them. So I don't see them necessarily winning one anytime soon, but it's better than the bottom 5.
Right. That'll lead us to number 3, the New Orleans Pelicans, with the average age of 25.56.
Longest playoff berth, losing in the Western Conference semis, not even the Western Conference finals in 2017-2018. The Pelicans, they're a newer franchise because they were the Hornets.
Right.
Now they're the Pels. Their amount of playoff berths since then, 1. That is not good. But you look at their team. They are currently 26 and 18 right now. Probably playing the best basketball since Anthony Davis was there. And they're
a solid
They're
squad.
a solid team. Like CJ McCollum is obviously leading the way. No offense to Zion, but he is. Let's be realistic here. But then you got Brandon Ingram, who's still only 25.
Yeah.
That's crazy to me.
Yeah.
Zion is 22.
Which is crazy.
It seems like he's older, honestly.
It's insane.
But my favorite guy on that team, Jose Alvarado.
Right. He's a great player.
He's still 24.
Yeah. Even Jackson Hayes, 22. Dyson Daniel, 19. Trey Murphy, 22, who's a big contributor for them. So they got these young guys that have been put around Zion and CJ that are stepping up. Guys like Trey Murphy and Dyson Daniel, Jackson Hayes. I wish we kind of saw a little bit more of EJ Liddell at Ohio State, but Kyra Lewis out of Alabama, he's 21. I mean, they got a real good squad, and they'll be a tough team.
Great coach right now. Willie Green is doing a fantastic job with that team.
Yeah, for sure.
And he's a Michigan guy, so
I was going to say I think he's a Michigan native. So we'll see what happens with New Orleans Pelicans, but they definitely had to be put at number 3. Number 2, we have the Portland Trailblazers with 24.78.
Longest playoff berth. This is honestly sad. They won the finals in 1976 and 77. It's been a while, but their amount of playoff berths since then, which it should be high given that their last finals was 1976, is 36. Their current record right now is 21 and 22. But this team is just, they're playing so well together. And it's even with an older Dame, which is impressive. And honestly, I think Jeremy Grant going there was a great move for them. And having Chauncey as their coach, great move. This team is just built. It's probably one of the most built teams that we're talking about today. And it just, remember when Drew Eubanks went off against us? Like, that's a good example. You have guys that most casual NBA fans have no idea who that is.
Right.
And they're just that solid. Like, their depth. My goodness. But yeah, I could see them winning a championship in the next 5 years. Maybe this year, but it just depends on how well they gel together.
Yeah, and they got guys like Greg Brown, who's still 21, Keon Johnson, 20, Shaden Sharp, who's 19, Nazir Little at 22. I mean, they got a lot of young guys. Jabari Walker, who kind of sits the bench, but he's 20. So, I mean, they got Anthony Simons, 4 years in the NBA, and he's 23. I mean, so they got a lot of young guys, and that guys like Anthony who are stepping up and playing really well. That leads us to number 1, the Memphis Grizzlies, with the average age of 24.27.
Their longest playoff berth was the Western Conference Finals in 2012 and 2013 when they lost.
Yeah.
Amount of playoff berths since then, this is actually not a good number. It's 6. But their current record right now, 30 and 13. They are playing great.
They are.
But my big thing on them is, can they win the championship this year? And my answer is maybe. It's not a no. It's not a yes. It's a maybe.
Yeah.
It just depends if they can go through a healthy Golden State.
Dude, they are so young and so good. It's crazy they're second in the West.
Yeah.
And they got Kenneth Lofton Jr., he doesn't play much, but he's 20. Zaire Williams, 21. Ja Morant, 23. Jaren Jackson, 23. They're arguably their most two key guys. Desmond Bane, who's still 24. I mean, they are just so young so good. And they definitely, if Ja Morant stays healthy and shows that he's not a Derrick Rose and ruins his career with injuries, they have a bright future and really fun to watch.
Imagine this. Game 7 between Warriors and Grizzlies in Memphis. Who do you think wins?
I mean, it's hard to bet against Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. I mean, we saw how clutch Klay is against the Pistons, forcing overtime.
Mm-hmm. But it's in Memphis, and you have the fans who Memphis. You have great fans, so they get rowdy.
Yeah,
so I don't know.
You know what? I might go with like a Desmond Bane big time 3. He's a sharpshooter. I can see him maybe pulling out a big 3 to win it.
But yeah, this team, they are cooking something special.
Yeah, and shout out their GM. I'm not sure what their GM name is, but shout out their GM.
I can't think of it off the top of my head.
Because most of those guys are his draftees. Yeah. Jaren Jackson, Ja Morant, Kenneth Lofton Jr., Desmond Bane. I mean, those are all his guys.
This team is just it's the most built team we've talked about today. Yeah. But it's more of like, can they get through a Warriors healthy team? Or can they get through the Nuggets, who have Jokic, who's arguably one of the best centers of all time? So I don't know if you can.
It'll be fun to see.
Yeah,
it'll be fun to see.
But we got to throw out our honorable mentions.
Yep.
And those were the New York Knicks, Sacramento Kings and Indiana Pacers.
Yeah, the New York Knicks, you could argue that they could go at like 10 or 9 or something like that, but like their age average was a little bit higher up than others, so it was like,
But not only that, but the last time they made a finals appearance was 1998 and 99. We weren't even born.
Yeah, that's terrible.
And the amount of playoff bursts since then, it's only 7. That is awful.
Yeah, that's worse than the Pistons.
Yeah. They won't win a championship in our lifetimes. I'm saying it right now.
Yeah. Didn't you say they hadn't won one in your dad's lifetime either? So we might as well just double it. Why not? But so leave a comment below if you disagree or agree with our Pistons at number 7 for top 10 youngest teams in the NBA. I'm kind of excited to see what the fellow community Detroit Pistons fans has to say about that take because. I mean, you can argue they're a little bit higher. You can argue they're a little bit lower, but I mean, they're fun to watch. Arguably,
we're not hating them.
No, we love our Detroit Pistons. So before we wrap up today's episode 11, I just want to give a quick shout out to Grind Clothing Co., who we have recently just put together our first merch drop. So you can find the link to our Grind Times Revved Up 906 merch in the description below and in our YouTube bio. So you can go check that out. We have men's and women's pullovers, t-shirts, and drawstring sweatshirts. So go check that out. We will be having another merch drop soon. We're going to Detroit for Pistons versus the Suns and Pistons versus
the
Hornets. So we will be going to Detroit where we will be teasing some of our new merch. We are looking forward to that next drop. It was we whipped it up in the stew together and really put our designer minds together. So we're super excited about that next drop. So be on the lookout for that. We will see you in our next Revved Up recap. Peace.